Off top, the little things on the side of the Steelers helmets, those little diamond-shaped things, they're called hypocycloids. Play the music.
This is the Domonique Foxworth Show.
Welcome to the Domonique Foxworth Show. I am joined by everybody's favorite guest, Jeff Saturday. What's up, Jeff?
How you living? Yeah, I'm number one, Jeff. Yeah, tell Darlington.
Yeah.
Take that, Darlington.
I mean, we don't even include him in the rankings. Like, there are no rankings for Jeffs. I know that was something that Charlie said. He was trying to be nice to Darlington. There's one Jeff. There's no conversation. You're not the number one Jeff because you're the only Jeff in our lives.
That's what I'm talking about.
You were laughing. We had a good laugh. We had a bunch of good laughs. We always have a lot of good laughs. Some of them can come to the air. Some of them cannot. But you said that the Twitter blew up today because I called you out about your suit and tie.
Yes, yeah. So you and I were going at it about Derrick Henry and like what the Ravens should be doing. You and I are going back and forth. And so my Twitter, and then you hit me with, oh, wait a minute. I know why Jeff is looking. I was thinking about this. You in your application uniform. You're trying to apply for a head coaching job. That's why you got the suit and tie
It's
on.
that time of year. It's that time of year when coaches start to get fired, and you need a little Jeff Saturday to bring you home. You need a little Jeff Saturday to steer the ship. And you said that generally Jeff's new to social media generally, but people on social media are telling you that you are right about our argument about Derrick Henry. So we might as well start there and continue this argument because I've never felt more righter in my life. So maybe your argument has changed and modified since we talked earlier.
No.
So I'll give you a chance to lay it out before I summarily dismantle it.
Okay, so here's my situation. I feel like every time the Ravens are going to play a championship caliber team, so let's say right now you would put the Steelers in that category because they've lost 2 games. They've battled through this, the quarterback scenario, and then liken it back to the AFC championship game last year against the Chiefs. They find themselves in a predicament where they go away from physicality, they go away from the run game, and they get really cute and finessey, in my opinion. And so my point to you was, and because the argument was the 2-point play, which I definitely think he should have been on the field, whether you're going to use him or not, he definitely needs to be on the field because it does present problems for defenses, especially in close quarters. But that's neither here nor there, right? They had their play. It didn't work out. But my point is, you were like, well, it wasn't like he was that effective. He had one big run because he was averaging about 5 yards a clip, but he had one massive run that kind of skews it. But my point to you was that's not atypical. That's his style. Like he may go 2-2-2 and then 40, right? But it's the back-breaking runs that he gets you that you've seen in the latter portion of games. I'm thinking back to like the Bengals and even the Cowboys, right? These kind of closer games where all of a sudden – you put the load on him and he's making these plays. And so the problem for me is, and I think their OC, I think he's a
Todd Monken.
Yeah, Todd Monken is a good football coach. This is not a slight on him because to me, this is a mentality that they have to get is teams that want to give them problems like the Steelers and even the Chiefs, they want to be more physical. Like you can think whatever you want about the Chiefs, but don't believe the hype. When it comes playoff time, they want to run the ball. They want to be physical. And that's where I feel like not using Derrick Henry more often, however you want to frame that, is disappointing to me.
Okay, so and I will even bolster your argument because I was thinking about big games that they had so far this year. And they played the Buffalo Bills. And Derrick Henry had 24 carries for 199 yards.
Boom.
And again, one of them was an 87-yard touchdown, which really skews those numbers. But when you get 200 yards, then it's not just one big play because the field is not 200 yards long. So Derrick Henry was incredibly impressive in that game. And sometimes we get caught in this trap, and you didn't fall into this trap. And generally, I was yelling at you on TV, but I was also yelling through you to a lot of other people who were saying dumb things like, when you run the ball more, you win. Like, of course, because you got a damn lead. Right. That's why you're running the ball a lot more. It's like the Ravens need to run the ball more. So we can take it case by case, but we don't have to. I think generally we agree that Derrick Henry is a home run hitter and you can find ways to get him the ball. It's probably smart. Or not even find ways. Hand that man the ball, get under center, and hand it to him. We don't need to run screens and do nothing cute. I'm with you there. This particular game, though, the criticism was they didn't give him the ball in the fourth quarter. And we talked about the fourth quarter was an incredible interception on one drive. And then the next drive was the best drive the Ravens had all day, and they didn't give Derrick Henry the ball. The 2-point conversion play, you and I probably agree. I think what was more offensive, and again, I think we came to a good place where we had kind of agreed generally, but what I didn't appreciate, because you show some respect to Todd Monken, what I did not appreciate was people acting like this guy who has orchestrated the best version of Lamar Jackson that we've ever seen and best version of this offense that we've ever seen.
Yeah.
People acting like he's stupid.
Right.
And you and that's what bothered me. Is like, why wouldn't they put Derrick Henry in the game? Like, there's a clear logic behind it. Maybe you think it's wrong, but giving the ball to the MVP with 3 yards to gain and taking Derrick Henry out, which is meant to influence, I assume, the defense to be in like a nickel or a dime so that you could get bigger blockers on their smaller players. You put Derrick Henry in after they called the timeout and kind of tricked the Ravens into showing them their good play. Then you take them out. If you put Derrick Henry in, you end up with run stuffers. If you want Lamar to run the ball, it's a bad situation. So it didn't work out, but it feels like, I don't know, it feels unfair to suggest that he's just one of these idiots out here that don't know what's going on.
Yeah. No, I agree with that point. Like, I agree with, everybody wants to throw, the entire offense out because of, I just don't want to see a pattern of behavior that I feel like if you look at the Raiders loss, it kind of rides the same line, right? Game kind of tight, fourth quarter, you should be able to kind of close that, but you don't. It's that same vein that you see that causes me concern, because if I'm John Harbaugh and I'm sitting there and I hear the 2-point play, John Harbaugh is a good football coach. He's won a lot of games. I'm not here to criticize.
Yeah.
He knows, so he obviously felt, hey, this is a good play, right? So I'm not here to say, but that what they had dialed up wasn't, because I've told you this, it's the hardest 2 or 3 yards in football. I don't care. We said, I said this when everybody's like, oh, you should go for it on 2.
Yeah.
No, bro, it's a hard freaking 2 yards, y'all. Like, this is not, all 2 yards are not created equal. That's just nonsense. Right. So I understand you try to get in and they called a timeout, which put more probably, they probably overthought it, honestly, instead of just going back to what they had. And they just like, oh, they know what we got. You know how, and we'll all overthink stuff like that. But I just have an issue with a pattern of behavior that I've seen that I don't want. I
think this is where the trap is for us, because I think it's a fair criticism of the Ravens in that conference championship game. I don't think it's a fair criticism of the Ravens in that Raiders loss, because that was in the second half. I just looked it up. Derrick Henry had 11 carries in the third and fourth quarter of that game. People were critical of the fourth quarter drive, but Lamar threw an interception, if I remember correctly, on one drive. Right. And then the second drive, they were down, and it was kind of a 2-minute drill. So, like,
he's not going to be in on that. Yeah.
Right. So, like, when the situation, and I think it's in part because we expect this from them because of that championship game, and then you look at the stats in isolation, and they can support your point. But they handed him the ball in that game. They just stunk. In the situations when they needed to move him out the way, they did. And I do think one of the we always think of the Ravens as big, physical, tough teams, and they are normally. But that is something that we saw them against the Steelers. And I don't want to suggest that the Ravens aren't tough or they aren't physical, but they've gotten a little bit away from that. And you having been an O-lineman on a kind of pass-centric, I guess, team.
Yeah, for sure.
It's a hard thing. How do you think about balancing that nastiness and physicality? Because you guys were kind of always viewed as, I played against you, so I know it's not true, but you were kind of always viewed as a softer team.
Yeah. No, you're 100% right, because you can't dispense physicality moving backwards. Yeah. And so at that point, you're talking about protecting the guy who's behind you is the most important and the most valuable thing you can do. And listen, and what they've been able to do offensively has been special. There's no doubt. And you kind of fall in love with explosive plays and tying those things in. I also think, and I had said this before the season, the Ravens they're probably on par of what I thought they would be. I thought they were going to take a step back. I told you this. I thought losing the defensive coordinator was a massive loss,
right?
And they have new offensive linemen. And so those two things to me gave me pause. They had outplayed, and everybody was like, oh, they're the best team in the league. They're this. And I was like, man, I hear you. I just don't know that passes the test that I'm looking at. Yeah. And so the physicality, for me, it's easier if you're going forward, if you're a young offensive lineman, than it is to go backwards and try to filter through things. And you saw, like, Aguilar's supposed to block down the 2-point play. That's not an easy play, y'all. Like, I'm just telling you, like, if Aguilar's going to pin and then peel and, like, get open and flash, that's one thing. But him blocking down on the edge, because why would not the guy not want to set the edge? Like, there's nothing out there that causes him pause. And so
Likely switched with him, which was weird, because not that Likely's a great blocker, but he's bigger and stronger than Aguilar, which is that would have made more sense.
Exactly.
If that's what you wanted to do.
Yeah, and you could tell they didn't really, they're moving around. The whole thing didn't seem like it was what they wanted necessarily, and it's hard, man. It's hard. It's hard. And they're not – you saw it. That's the exposure I think they face, right? Could they – now, if they get into a track meet, I think they're as good as anybody. But they – like, you saw them beat the brakes off the Bills, man. I mean, they got after him. But they got after him early, and then they get that lead, dude, and it's just it's a self-fulfilling prophecy then, bro. They're going to just beat the brakes off of you.
And they have the two options there. When you get the lead, you have two options, run, pass, and that's really dangerous. I think there's a couple things about Lamar in this game that were concerning, for me at least, but one of the big things is what I was impressed with Lamar is he's destroyed the blitz, and that was how you used to beat Lamar, by blitzing him. This game, they dropped back on him, and he had trouble with it.
Yes.
And you got to tuck and run some more. And I had a conversation with Mina on her show about it. It's like Lamar's always been hesitant, even back to colleges. We think of him as quick to scramble because his scrambles are so effective, but he's late to scramble.
Yes.
And it's one of your best weapons. I think he's got to do that to put pressure on this defense more often. The concerns for me about the Ravens generally is about their inability to get pass rush and them shaking up the secondary. So, like, I had them as a Super Bowl favorite early in the season because I assumed the names on the defense were going to come around, but I've come off of them. But what we do agree on is Derrick Henry is great, and I think that could lead us to a next part of our conversation that you and I had. Generally, one of my blind spots is probably, like, forgetting about the importance of physicality. I've addressed that blind spot. As you know, I talk about O-line play and running backs a lot, and I think it's possible that maybe we're headed for a new appreciation for running backs based on what's happening this year.
There is absolutely no doubt. You are seeing, and I say it this way, the three players being Derrick Henry, Saquon Barkley, and Joe Mixon. Think about what they have all brought to their new teams in this NFL season. And now you talk about these guys they ain't young. I mean, they're not like babies just coming out of college. These are seasoned, grizzled vets, whatever you want to call them, however you want to talk about them. Even J.K. Dobbins. I mean, like, Dobbins is coming off major injuries, right? Like, these guys, Gus Edwards, same thing. Like, but the value of a running back being able to get behind his pads and make you right when you're wrong, there's not a better play in football. And let me tell you why that's true. When you think about a pass game, it takes a lot of moving parts to be successful, right? The line's got to be good. The quarterback's got to be right. The receiver's got to be right. Everything's kind of got to time up. I remember blocking for Edgerrin James. And I remember there'd be downs where you call it a stalemate, right? You're both, you and the defensive lineman butt heads, and and no one's moving anybody. You're both within a yard of the line of scrimmage one way or the other. And Edge would hit that thing downhill, and it's a 4.5 yard clip. And you get up and you look at that defensive lineman's eyes, and he goes, dang, bro. Like, because he's done his job, but it don't matter because your back is creating. And that's what we talk about with Derrick Henry is bring your own blocker, right? He doesn't need the leads, right? He doesn't. And Saquon's doing it, and Joe Mixon's doing it. They're bending these plays back, and they're getting the explosive plays, or even not explosive, they're getting the extra yard, the hidden yardage in the run game that changes games. And if you don't value them, you're silly, because this ain't fantasy football, y'all. This is real first downs getting converted, and it matters in football because you're controlling the clock, keeping your defense fresh, and taking the burden off the quarterback and what he has to do.
So, I mean, we can never forget that this game is a game about physicality. And
Amen.
I think it was last season where Marcus Spears, I had to have him on the show to apologize for him, because I started to forget that the physicality was incredibly important, and thinking that you can manufacture your way around it, which you can in some ways. But to your point, it's the easiest and safest way to move the ball. And so you talked about, everyone can see when Saquon breaks a big run. And I mean, I think other names, you mentioned Kenneth Walker when we were having this conversation while we were drinking coffee, and how he's valuable. And Josh Jacobs is a name that you could put in there. You can see the impact.
James Conner in Arizona. Oh. Good Lord.
And so there's no problem with us understanding how a big play matters. But when Zeke was a rookie, I remember writing a column about this and talking about it on all the shows, is like how, and you use the terminology, the hidden yardage. And we talk so much about third downs, how important it is to convert on third down. If you hand a running back the ball and it's 2 yards expected out of this play, Zeke was always, one of the things that I thought was so special about him was the power that he had and the way he would find angles at his best. And there's so many other backs that do this and have done it in recent years. But Zeke, I just remember writing this piece, so it stands out in my mind. Zeke would take a play that was blocked for 2 yards and make it 4 yards. And we would forget that play. And first or second and 6 is different than second and 8. And third and 3 is different than third and 6 or third and 5. And those hidden yardage plays, and I think, I don't want to completely discredit the nerds and the analytics. Like, there has some value, because I think where the point is made, where they make a good point, is the money that we used to pay for running backs, because like in the 90s, relative to the rest of the salary cap, because the rule changes, frankly, and the more reliance on passing.
Right.
I think paying a running back what you would pay a top number 1 receiver, I get why that's hard, especially given that there's a lot more access to average running backs than there is to other positions. So, like, I'm not saying that the analytics are completely worthless, but I do think we fall in love with them, and we think that we can outsmart the game.
That's right.
When, as complicated as this game can be, or not complicated, I think complex is a better word.
That's right.
Because it's a simple game, but it's a lot of different moving parts. But one thing that ain't never going to change is the bigger, stronger, more aggressive team is going to have an advantage.
Amen.
And as I start to consider letting my son play tackle football, it's a reminder of when I was a kid, there were some kids that was just bigger and stronger, and there wasn't no damn scheme for it.
Yeah.
There ain't no scheme for it.
No, you go receive it. I mean, that's the bottom line. You're gonna be there all day. You're gonna receive it, and what will is gonna be broken, yours or his?
Yeah.
And I think it's funny when you were saying that, because I'm thinking back, and I think about the receiving position. And the NFL goes ebbs and flows, right? Big receiver, small receiver, same for offensive linemen, same for corners. It all goes through, right? But when you think about, it's really hard, y'all. I mean, and I want the people who listen, it's really hard to know who is a true one at receiver. Like, that word gets thrown around, bro, a lot. And you and I both know, he's a one. No, there ain't many ones. And what you mean by a one is, that's the dude, he gets open. It don't matter double coverage. It doesn't matter what scheme team. He is going to find a way to be QB friendly and get himself open. And there's only a handful, and it's like, and so to your point, that's why having a running back is so valuable. Because I can tell you this, I have been around the game long enough and helped enough teams and had conversations with people and watched enough film, and they're like, oh yeah, this is our one. I'm like, he ain't a one. Like
He's your one.
He's your one, but he's not a one.
He's not a one. Yeah.
He can't separate, bro. And if every corner on the team can cover him or give him, that ain't the one, right? So I think we have devalued a position, to your point, that brings a level of physicality. And like when you look at like Montgomery and Gibbs, right? These are two kind of different type players, But man, the amount of explosive plays these guys have, not only running it, but catching it because of the physicality, it just
and the explosive plays they create for Jared Goff because they need to address that, and it all goes back to offensive line play too. But it's a combination of line play and good backs. And I think that the chain reaction created by the hidden yards, I think, is something that we should touch on too, because it is a chain reaction in that. If the point I was making before is how 2nd and 8 is different than 2nd and 6.
Right.
So like 2nd and 6, if you're in 2nd and 8, you're in a passing down. 2nd and 6, you have a two-way option, pass or run.
Right.
And that makes it a lot easier for your receivers. And so I think
explain that to people who listen. Like when we have offensively, we have a play sheet, right? Like you have a play sheet and it's separated. So explain what you mean.
So the play sheet is separated by down and distance.
Right.
So we have a bunch of plays that we like on 1st and 10. These are the plays that we're going to look at. Then there's like 2nd and 10 to different people do different numbers, but maybe 7. And those are the plays that we like in that. And then there's like 2nd and 4 to whatever. So that's how the play sheet is divided up. And so on defense, we divide our play sheet up similarly, where it's like, all right, this is obviously a running down, or this is passing down, or this is what his team likes to do. When you put them in situations where it's 2nd and 5 or 2nd and 6, then we're guessing.
That's exactly right.
Based on formation, based on personnel, based on how you've had success. If you're in 2nd and 8, we're like, all right, they throw in this thing.
That's right.
And so that those couple of yards, I think, they're hidden and they get lost in the value that it has and what it does to a defense and where your safeties have to be.
Yes.
And how open your receivers are going to be. But I do think I don't want to lose sight of the fact that the NFL has made deliberate rule changes that have made it easier to pass. Like you can't hit receivers the same. And so the rule changes are designed to both protect players and also open up the game. So like you can't hit quarterbacks low, you can't hit them high, you can't hit receivers over the middle the way that you used to. You can't they started to more emphasize, while I was playing, they had more emphasis after the Patriots had success on illegal hands downfield. So all of that combined to make it easier to pass.
Yep.
And so then you're like, all right, we go more to the passing. And so we also get a situation where some of the best linebackers in football are 220 pounds.
Preach.
Never. That was a safety. And so we're doing old man stuff, get off my lawn, but there is an opportunity to address a weakness. The game has moved to a place where the 200-pound, 230-pound strong safety who was destroying people over the middle or filling up the run, there's no use for him now.
Right.
That guy better be able to play man coverage.
That's right.
Yeah, Cam Chancellor's perfect example.
Right.
Find me a Cam Chancellor in the league. Find me a guy whose purpose is to destroy.
Right.
That doesn't exist at the safety spot. So there's an opportunity there.
That goes every position. Like I look at the game now, like the defensive linemen are significantly smaller than what we face, right? And so
do you remember? Hold on. Do you remember that in the 3-4 back in the day, the whole position of nose tackle? It was just to be enormous. Your job was to be immovable.
Good God.
Like Sam Adams, who was a great athlete, but his job was to be enormous. There is not like now. It's like Aaron Donald is the prototype.
Ted Williams, Pat Williams in Buffalo.
You had to block him. So I don't.
Big Grady. I can't remember his last name. Oh God, he was with the Raiders for a while. He was a beast. I mean, you think about the way the game was played. Jamal Williams from San Diego,
Oh
the
yeah.
Chargers. Oh my God. I mean,
Google these people,
he
kids.
didn't even wear tape on his hands or his wrists, bro. He just looked like you. He was like he would look at you like you slapped his child, and he wanted to shorten my neck on every play, right? I mean, Casey Hampton, like they had all these dudes that main job was to gobble and eat space, man. And I mean,
Right.
they were enormous. Saragusa, like their job was to grab this. Don't let them get to the linebackers, who, by the way, were like 270. You know what I
Yes.
mean?
Yeah.
And so, the game has, but that to
So
me
that
is
speaks
why
to
the
the fact
running
that there's
back,
an opportunity.
yeah,
Right.
has opened up even more, right? I mean, Derrick Henry's bigger than everybody on the freaking defense. Like
Yeah.
that's real. That
Yeah,
is
Derrick
real.
Henry's the size of modern defensive ends.
Yeah,
Right.
which
Like
is
he's a pass rusher size.
yes,
Like
yeah,
that's entirely different in the past, where the difference was, or those guys would have been like Derrick Henry would have been like linebacker size,
yes,
and the
yes,
defensive
correct.
ends would have been like the size of D tackles, and
Yes,
D tackles are no longer in the league. Like
no,
there's no spot for you if you
no,
can't run and move. And
no.
so there is an opportunity there to take advantage. And I think it's part of the reason why some of these more physical teams have success. Speaking of one of those teams that obviously puts a premium on physicality, we haven't talked much about the Sunday night game, which I think was a significant game. It's Chargers, or actually it was Bengals at Chargers.
Yes.
So there's two aspects of this game that I think is important. One is about Joe Burrow having an incredible season that seems like it's going to get wasted.
Ooh.
And the other one is the Chargers a little ahead of schedule. So I want to start with the Chargers because I think it dovetails well with what we're talking about. And maybe dove is too soft an animal. It bear tails well with what we are talking about, because they choose violence.
Ooh.
They chose a left tackle in the draft because they already had a left tackle. So rather than, and this was the conversation back when Chase and Penei Sewell, and it feels like Chase and Sewell, like no one was wrong about that, but I was squarely on the get Penei Sewell, and they went Jamar Chase. It's clear that in the draft, Harbaugh was like, give me Joe Alt. I'll put him across from Slater,
Yep.
and we are going to bash people offensively.
Yes. Listen, when you think about the mentality that Harbaugh has brought to the Chargers, and even look at the way that Herbert is playing, like much, much, much less is asked of him than has ever been asked of him in his career. He is going to bludgeon you, and he doesn't care what quarter it is. He doesn't care what the clock said. This dude is going to come at you and just bear down. And his point in the entire game is when it gets to the fourth quarter and we got 3 minutes left, we're going to be the most conditioned team and the most physical team. That's the same model Detroit has put into existence 3 or 4 years, and they are sticking with it. And you see players buy in. And when the quarterback is on board, you don't hear him complaining. You don't hear any receivers complaining, not getting enough of this, not getting enough of that. And you got two backs in Dobbins and now Gus Edwards, and they are physically running over you. And you're seeing to me, because everybody's talking about Tomlin, and obviously you'll never say, but being coach of the year, Harbaugh is going to be the coach of the year. I mean, this guy has come in and completely morphed this team, and now you're seeing their defense.
Defense is playing well, man.
Oh, my God.
Well, they gave up some big plays in this game, but generally they were playing really well. This was the first time that they went up against like a really good offense, but they played great in the first half. They struggled a bit in the second half, but overall, relative to the talent and the expectations, this whole team is overachieving, and the defense for sure is doing that.
And you think the way the defense is built, they got two edge rushers who can go this is when healthy, obviously. Everybody said that. They got a safety who can do
Derwin
everything.
James is flexible.
I mean,
Christian Fulton is a corner that they got that's playing really well. But like there are holes in that team. But the thing that I find important or I find interesting is this team, and I think you and I had this conversation last week, where we are so critical of the Cowboys and other teams in the league rosters and their talent. And I'm reminded when I see a team like this that nobody should be that bad.
No.
There's enough, like everybody on your roster is a good football player.
Absolutely.
I don't give a damn how good you are. Like nobody should be in a completely kicked.
Right.
Like, you should be able to hang in there in those games. And I think the Chargers are a reminder of that because they were bad. And we thought that this team was no good, but they got a coach that came in there. And this is the other point that popped into my head. I want to get to the Bengals conversation with you in a second because I think your experience is going to be valuable because their roster or their team construction reminds me a lot of your Colts teams. But this is what I want to say. We always have to remember that there's more than one way to do things. And we fall in love with the coaches that are able to adapt to what they have and build around it and optimize their best players. However, this goes back to the original point. Jim Harbaugh knows how football is won and lost.
That's right.
And it did not matter who was on that team. And I think a lot of coaches would come in there and say, all right, we have to optimize for Justin Herbert.
Yeah.
No. He went and brought in Greg Roman, who is most known for offenses built around Lamar Jackson, where it was just quarterback run focus and Colin Kaepernick. He went and got him because you know what? We are not going to build our offense around the talents of this quarterback. We're going to build this offense the way that I always know how to play football.
That's right.
With a strong offensive line, and we're going to run the ball, and it's going to take pressure off the quarterback and unlock them. And so there are drawbacks because I saw in the 2-minute drill, they just kept running the slot option. So, like, there are modifications, and eventually I think the Ravens outgrew Greg Roman's style of offense, and I think Todd Monken is doing something better now.
Sure.
However, you starting a program the way you want to start it is by getting big dudes that can punch dudes in the mouth.
Amen. And listen, this is from all, and you know, because you're coaching young kids now.
Yeah,
there is in any level of football, whether it's the NFL, there is a start. This is kind of the argument for the Bears and what people were disappointed with the Bears and Shane Waldron and Caleb. Like, there's a time, man, that you run mirror routes, right? Like, it is what it is. It's not sexy. It's not whatever, right? There are times you run very simple things for people to kind of understand the game. Now, I'm not talking about the NFL, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah. I mean, even in the NFL, though.
Yeah,
but
make it simple, right? Like, understand, okay, this is what we're going to do. Harbaugh sells the bill of goods, and it has proven him right everywhere he's been. That trust the process. I'll make you better in the long run. It might not be as flashy. It might not be as sexy at first, but the big plays will come, and I will coach you up to when they're there. You take full advantage of it. And when we start winning, that's when that's when all the awards come hit you. You know what I mean? And
it reminds me. Yeah, and it reminds me of the conversation we were having a couple weeks ago on air about how Teddy Bruschi said that, and you and I both appreciated him saying this, said that the Chiefs don't have an identity. And they are flexible and they can change. That is, if you think of like the evolution of man, that is some upright, full man stuff. And some of these teams ain't there yet.
No.
And we talked about this in relation to the Bears, is like, y'all need an identity. You can't week to week change your up. Like, y'all pick a play. On the first day of training camp, y'all gonna get good at this.
That's
and we ain't doing nothing else
until
I know that y'all got this under control. And then we'll off of that power. We will do a play action. And once y'all get that down, we'll add a new formation.
You'll love this. When I got to Indy and Tom Moore and Howard Mudd, and it was Peyton's second year, we basically had 3 runs. We ran outside zone, inside zone, and trap. There wasn't nothing else. Hey, we weren't dialing anything else up. When it was like, oh, what are you going to do when it's all on the line, when it's nut cutting time? Run outside zone, run stretch. We're going to run inside zone. We're going to run trap. And that's all we got.
And you guys had like 5, 6, 7 passing plays. Y'all weren't doing nothing crazy. I remember watching tape, getting ready for games against y'all, and it was like, it's the same thing. Like, Payne's going to try to hard count, and he's going to put you guys into, not huddle, put you guys into the best play for whatever we're in. But y'all weren't doing a whole bunch. And you mentioned how that became a problem for you guys. But you know when it became a problem? In the divisional round or the championship round. Like, at that point, y'all might need a change up because
Yeah,
the teams that you're playing against have developed schemes to stop you. But you know where it wasn't a problem all year when y'all was winning 13
that's right.
games like
That's
it
right.
was nothing.
Yeah, you
But
you don't gotta go to 404 when you 101 works. 101 is good. Just stay there.
yeah, we can get that masters level stuff
That's
when we
right.
get to the playoffs.
That's right.
The speaking of you guys teams, I think the Bengals is an interesting team to compare to you guys. Your defenses were always better than this, but you played on defenses that had two great receivers and a quarterback that's playing incredibly well. So what do you make of the way the Bengals are kind of like if they were 500, we'd be talking about them as a scary team. We'd be talking about Joe Burrow as MVP.
Yeah, this is probably the most disappointing team for me outside of the Cowboys, that implosion. I just did not see I didn't see them struggling this bad. When I think about my teams in Indy, we had, to your point, we were built similarly, right? Like the money's,
Mhm.
but when you say that, Chase ain't been paid, man. Like, I mean, you
That's
know what I
true.
mean? Like that's the part that's kind of concerning to me is this guy's up. Like
Yeah.
he's gonna be up. And I know the franchise, all that but
Yeah.
you got Burrow and you have Higgins, you have these guys who should make a number of
Yeah.
plays. They're making them. And then what we don't have anything on the defensive side. You
Yeah.
have Hendrickson who's leading. You got Hubbard over there. Something for
Yeah.
me, something's not happening and operating on the defensive side that's got to get
Right.
improved.
I
And I'm
mean,
just
and
going to
and
say,
it's
yeah, they have enough over there. They got enough
they
over there, man.
they always start slow too. Like this does scream to me coaching, but you don't want to make switch ups at coaching because they have been to a Super Bowl and they
Right.
have been really good. But there are some shortcomings, and they might have missed their chance when they were in the Super Bowl against the Rams and they were a play away. That's
Yeah.
why these opportunities are so fleeting. These windows, and again, this is something else you can speak to. Where for an entire decade, you guys were Super Bowl contenders. You walked away with one.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
hard, man. It's
Oh, it's
hard, and these
hard.
windows close on you fast.
Oh, and listen, and even in the same season, I
Yeah,
remember we beat Pittsburgh the year we lost to Pittsburgh. That was our best team by far in '05. We beat them pretty good on a Monday night game. And then they come back 3 weeks later or 4 weeks later or whatever, and they catch us at home and we end up losing. Same with the Chargers, right? We go out, we're a 12-win team. I think they won 9 or 10 games, but they won their division and we didn't. So we got to travel to San Diego. We never played well there. They
yeah,
get you, right? Like to your point, it's matchups. And when you get matched up with teams at certain points and guys banged up, right? Was Freeney healthy? Was he hurt? I mean, all the little things that go on in an NFL season, ain't nothing promised. And
I don't.
you are wasting.
Yeah,
If they don't make the playoff, it was a wasted season on this offense. Because again, I love Burr. He gets hurt. I mean, like whatever you want to say about the dude, he gets hurt. He's missed a lot of time, and that's unfortunate because he's so good. But you never know, man. Like you want every opportunity to make the most of his career, and you've let one slide if you don't get there with this year.
all right, yeah. Those Colts teams that you had were really impressive and always in the running, in large part because of some veteran players that you guys had. You could trust that you had a system that you understood.
That's
This
right.
current Colts team is not that. So I think everybody's I don't want to be hyperbolic, but a couple weeks ago when Richardson, they decided to bench Anthony Richardson, it got real hot over there, it felt like to me, where
Yeah.
we were all descending on them and they turned to Joe Flacco. And then it heated up when Joe Flacco played poorly and they lost a couple of games. And
Yeah.
then they bring back Anthony Richardson. I think we haven't talked about it very much, but this wasn't like, I want to call it a must win, but like
Oh,
this felt like the blueprint might have went up in flames if Anthony Richardson was bad, but he was great.
no, he played lights out, and he played his best game by far of the season, and played within himself. I mean, you saw the game that he wasn't pressing. first of all, he's a physical specimen. So, I mean, I don't know how many times a free rusher comes through and the guy's like draped on him. He's like Heisman him and still, still putting the ball down there, doing those kinds of things. My biggest thing, and you heard me rant, and I did it on every show, was you knew what you had when you drafted him. And the most important thing for the Colts last season before he got injured, and this season, as to me, this is kind of like his rookie year. I think this is now his 11th start, is developing Anthony Richardson. Because is it fair to other players? No. Does that really matter in life? No. So, it is what it is, right? Like that's the facts of life, is that if you want the franchise to be what it can be, you have to develop this player that you went and got who can be special. And so allow him to be special, but you have to develop him in that. I thought Steichen did a really good job of getting him into a nice rhythm. To me, he could be a better version of the Jalen Hurts experience in Philly. And, so now he has to improve accuracy. He's got to, he's got to be able to figure it out down the field. There's things, but dude, he is a monster of a human being. I mean, like Cam Newton type monster.
That's the
bro.
When you walk in the room with him, is it the same as when you're in a room with Cam Newton?
Yes.
Like his measurables is he's 6'4", which puts him in the 67th percentile for quarterbacks, which isn't huge, but he's 248 pounds, 96th percentile for quarterbacks at the combine. It's ridiculous.
Unreal, bro. It looks like a freaking brick house coming out there. And he's got a massive arm, and he has a raw innate ability to find ways to make plays, right? And so I love that he runs it in, he scores, he plays physical behind his pads, he trusts all those things. But I want to see that RPO game. I want to see the development of the passing game off of that, all that 2022 team that Philly had. Now, are they as good up front as Philly was? No, but they're trying to get there. And they've had some injuries up front, which have kind of hurt them. But Richardson, I was excited for him to get back. I want the emphasis to be on developing AR and figuring out what he is by the end of this season. Now, are they a playoff team? I'm not sure. Like they don't. There's nothing they do extremely well that just makes you go, "Wow!" I thought Taylor would have a much bigger year. I think they gave him 24 touches last week. I think he got 60 yards or something. Like I said, the line hasn't played great, and they've been banged up. But Richardson is the key to this season, and because you got to build for the future. And I told you, I thought people were doing some things to save some jobs, and I ain't a fan of that, bro. That ain't the way. That ain't the way I roll.
Well, we're a fan of you and your honesty, your people there, so I appreciate that. Yeah, Anthony Richardson is exciting, and I think the coaches have started to do a better job of setting him up to have success. And maybe who is to say whether the break was what he needed or not what he needed? I mean, who knows?
And let me say this, because you and I talked about this. The tap thing, I probably would have sat him too, right? I probably would have sat him, but the difference between me and what they did was, when you start making the statements of Flacco's our quarterback the rest of the season, no, like we don't, and take a lesson from Mike Tomlin, bro. I don't got to tell you I don't got to tell you anything. I'm going to tell you, hey, this week Flacco's starting. Next week Flacco might start. I'm going to decide whoever I want to start. I'm good with that. Like, as a fan, because I'm a fan of I'm fine with that. But don't make these these ultimatums. This is how it's going to be the rest of the year. Like, we don't know what tomorrow brings, bro. Why are we giving so much credence to somebody else wanting our information? That's the part that pissed me off.
Yeah, you don't have to tell them nothing. You can tell them what you want. Yeah, you have to sit there. You can pull a Marshawn.
Yeah,
I'm just here so I don't get fined.
Yeah, and listen, what do they know? They don't know nothing. You don't tell them, bro. Like Tomlin has learned that. Say a lot of fancy words without saying anything, and you look really good. You know what I mean?
What Tomlin does is he says something. He gives you a catchphrase or a turn of phrase, and he delivers it so well that we all just like, did you see how good it was?
Yeah, and he's like this.
He give you the eyes, and that man ain't said
nothing.
What is it? The standard is the standard.
Yeah.
That don't mean nothing. But we love it because he give us the eyes, and then then his players go back it up, and then they all say it.
Oh.
I want volunteers, not hostages.
Yeah.
That's the thing. It's like, oh, he says all these great things that I agree. They sound great because he's saying them.
Yes.
And the reason why it matters that he's saying them is because he has a track record to support it.
Oh, yeah.
So Shane Steichen and everybody else, you ain't him.
Right.
So you need to go ahead and fall back. You don't have to give us any information.
Silent.
The same thing with Eberflus. Like, he out here like explaining his thought processes. His thought process on these decisions in the late game. He's trying to impress us with how smart he is, how thoughtful he is. Nah, man. Don't say it. Because we just gonna pick it apart.
How about when Tomlin, this was my favorite, when Johnson came back this week to play against him, and they asked him, I think it was on Tuesday or Wednesday last week, they were like, hey, Deontay, and he was like, I got other players of much higher concern that I got to focus on. I was just like,
exactly. What about you and I called this out last week, I think, when Mike Tomlin, after their win last week, they asked him about Jaden Daniels related to Lamar Jackson as he was going into Lamar Jackson. And Mike Tomlin said, oh, that's Mr. Jackson. Me and you was like, that is classic buttering up. Coaches always butter him up. We are Mr. Jackson. I respect Mr. Jackson. That man don't give a damn about Mr. Jackson. You know the names he calling Mr. Jackson in his own locker room? And you know how, hey, we're going to get his ass. He ain't calling him Mr. Jackson. But when he get in front of the microphone, he hit you with this Mr. Jackson. Then after the game, he like, man, a lot of respect for Mr. Jackson. Then he walked back and we 8-1 against him. He laughing in the locker room with his team.
Let him
know, man.
Hey, TD, Tony Dungy, I used to tell him like this. TD, you would have thought he made Tom Brady sound like a below average quarterback every time we played him. I told Tony one time, I pulled him up after a teammate. I said, Tony, thank God I never heard your scouting report on me before I played with, because if he is that bad, like what am I? I mean, you know what I mean? I'm like, am I supposed to be sweeping floors on the team? Like how bad am I? He just gave me a grin. He's like, well, I just don't know, and just move on. But that's what they do. They talk you up in the media, bro. And then meeting rooms, they'll let dudes have it, bro. They will let them have it for sure.
All right. So I think we're done. This is great, Jeff. Thank you so much. I feel blessed to have you on because I learned something, and I don't know if it's learned something new, but I was reminded of something that I never want to forget, and I hope everyone else recognizes it also. The theme, I think, for this show is simplicity.
Yeah, amen.
Like simplicity.
Amen.
Just focus on, if you can take this to your job or your life or your school, just focus on the basic stuff. Amen. Your relationship, whatever. You ain't got to do nothing great.
No.
Do the basic stuff right, and then you build on it.
That's right. Fundamentals, baby. Let it ride.
I said relationship, but I was thinking about something else. You ain't got to get too tricky, man. You know what's needed.
You're a fool, bro.
All right, we out. Thanks, Jeff. Thanks to all the great producers. I love you too, bro. Domonique Foxworth Show. Rate, review, all that stuff. Bye.
This is the Domonique Foxworth Show.